This is Chris report, and he assured me that since I'm down in Boulders, folks, this is Chris Wyatt reporting from South Africa. Hello, folks, and welcome back to Chris Wyatt Reports on the Hlabisa Africa channel. This is Chris in central Pennsylvania with my special guest this morning, none other than the president of the Inkatha Freedom Party. It's the Honorable Velinkotsini Hlabisa. Sawubona, how are you today, sir?
Good morning, Chris, and the viewers of this program. I'm very well. A little bit tired. The campaign has been exhausting, but inspiring too.
Well, that's something I want to talk to you about. I know that, and very kind of you to give us your time on a busy schedule. We're just days before what could be a momentous election. And even if it's not a momentous election, it's certainly the most talked about national election in South Africa since 1994. You've been campaigning all over the place. And obviously, as you said, you're tired. I know what that feels like. I recently ran for office myself here in Pennsylvania for the legislature, knocking on doors every day. It gets quite wearing and tiring, meeting people, talking to people. And unfortunately, I lost, and I'm hoping that things go better for the IFP. And you have just a few days left. How is the campaign going from your perspective?
The campaign is going very well, because up to so far, throughout the country, we are not experiencing challenges between political parties in terms of failure to tolerate each other. The spirit is good. There is a lively competition. All political parties are on the ground, talking to people daily. It is very encouraging because the awareness of every South African looks better than any other years this year. Because wherever you go, there is a feeling which you get from the people that people want change. And they know that in order to get change, they must participate. So we're looking to the 29th of May as a great day in our country to mark a new beginning. And we are doing the final push to reach every South African voter and encourage them that it is now or never if you want to see change in our country.
Well, sir, during the municipal elections a couple of years ago, I encouraged South Africans to go to the polls, and I wasn't successful. The turnout was pretty low, 31%. But the upshot of that is that the Inkatha Freedom Party did very well vis-a-vis its opponent, the ANC, in KZN in particular. The reason I mention this, and I want to bring this question up to you, is that my argument to South Africans is that the way that most people see service delivery, which is a major concern, is at the local level. Your rubbish, your local water, your electricity, your law enforcement, the streets, the infrastructure, the way that people see that is done locally. And if other parties beyond the ANC control municipalities, they can show that they're capable of delivering transparent, honest, and successful governance. Now, the reason I say this, and I believe it's true, and I want to get your take on this, is that I argue that in KZN in particular, because of what happened in July 2021, the ANC would do poorly, and I was correct. But my argument was that if another party like the IFP can do well, they have a chance to take over municipalities and prove their worth to the voters. Now, the historical example is, in fact, the IFP did very well in that municipal election in KZN, and you took over many more municipalities. Has it worked in your favor? Are voters seeing what the IFP can actually accomplish when they're in office? Or is it just been even, or has it been a negative? How's it worked out for the IFP from that perspective?
The experience of the voters in the municipalities we govern is a good experience, because this has been demonstrated by a number of by-elections that has taken place after 2021. The IFP has won 15 wards from ANC going to the IFP. That is a show of confidence by the electorate to the IFP, by giving IFP support over a period of 2 months from the last local government elections. And why people are showing this confidence? It is because of the transparency, the service delivery, the accountability they see in the IFP-led municipalities. What made things easier for us, we only had 10 points as a manifesto, and our councillors were given our manifesto as their guide. Whenever they make budget, they must talk to what made people to vote the IFP for. Now, this therefore makes our municipalities to be accountable to the promises they made to people. So far, we are very satisfied because even at a national level, as the national leadership, we are holding our councillors, our mayors accountable to ensure that they deliver the promises we made.
So thankfully, from my perspective, we've not heard much from Julius Malema in this election cycle, but one time he did stand out was recently. He tried to convince voters, I believe in the Eastern Cape, pointing out that that voters shouldn't vote for people based on history. Specifically said ANC, this is not the party of Mandela. And he made a dig at the IFP saying this is, Buthelezi is gone now too. This will be the first election since the loss of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who was a larger-than-life figure. I'm sure that many people miss him, and I miss my opportunity to meet him. I'm really disappointed in that. We came so close. But this will be the first time without him. But it doesn't seem like that's even a factor in this election. It seems more like the IFP is looking to take care of the voters and not calling on the legacy of the past. Is that a fair statement, or is the Prince part of the campaign in some way?
Physically, as the Prince is no longer with us, he is not part of the campaign. But the principles he stood for, integrity, honesty, transparency, and accountability, are the principles that we are promoting in our campaign. And those are the principles we say people must judge us on their basis once we are elected into government. But what is very good the Prince did before he left us, he handed over the baton in 2019 to a new leadership. And he was there to guide the new leadership. In 2021, I am the one who was driving the campaign during the local government election under his guidance. So now when he left the party in the hands of men and women capable enough to take the IFP forward. That is why our campaign is a formidable campaign, and it is up to standard, and everybody who sees how we are campaigning becomes assured that the IFP can handle the affairs of the country if you look at how their campaign is styled, is aggressive, talking to issues of the people, and responding whenever people make queries on where the IFP stands. So now the IFP campaign is in a good shape, and we are confident the voters will endorse us, and we will be a major factor at a national level in the government, and in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng at a provincial government levels.
Well, that would track with what I'm expecting to see myself. We're going to talk and mention a few times the ruling ANC because it's just necessary to have this conversation. But there is I don't want to use the phrase, but I guess I'll say new kid on the block, but not really. Of course, it's being led by an octogenarian, so not really the new kid on the block. But of course, the elephant in the room I'm talking about is the MK party. Many analysts, when they made their splash, because they were looking quite in the polls, of course, these polls are all over the place. About a month ago, when the Brenthurst poll came out, then the Ipsos poll, they were looking quite strong. But it appears that they're imploding for a number of reasons. But MK, with Jacob Zuma carrying the standard for them, even though I can't serve in Parliament, seems to be a thorn in the ANC side. And many analysts initially were saying that, well, this is disastrous for the ANC and for the IFP. That's not what I'm seeing, but I'm not on the ground, so I'd like to get your take. It looks to me more like those who are disaffected with the ANC that are gravitating to MK also include some EFF supporters and not necessarily IFP. So the question is, has MK had a negative impact on your ability to draw voters? And if not, are you pulling disaffected ANC voters back to the Inkatha fold?
The arrival of the MK in the political space brought a new dimension. One must accept that fact, because there are people who are dissatisfied with ANC but remain ANC members. Those people would have voted for other parties like the IFP. Now they will be voting for the MK, because the MK is clearly ANC that wants to fix the main mother body that is led by Cyril Ramaphosa. So now, in a way, that is how the IFP can be affected. But generally, we are not going to be affected that much, because there is no IFP member who will go and vote for MK, because MK stated it that they remain ANC. And secondly, a person who wants to choose between the IFP and the ANC, I'm referring to an undecided voter, will not vote for MK, because the person will know, if I vote MK, I am voting ANC. A person who doesn't want to vote ANC will vote the IFP, because if you vote the MK, you are voting for an ANC wing that wants to fix the mother body ANC. It is only an aggrieved ANC member who will not vote the ANC but will rather vote the MK. Even when we campaign on the ground, what we are seeing, we do not see people who have not been participating in politics being amongst the ranks of the MK. But the people in the MK are people who have been active in the ANC. And we are receiving more new members on a daily basis as we are doing our campaigns throughout South Africa, which shows that people who no longer want to go for ANC, they will go for IFP, because they know IFP is different from the ANC, while MK is the ANC in another form to fix the mother body.
Well, I can't disagree with that. It's no different. To me, the EFF is simply the bumhurt ANC, and COPE was the same. It's just a little hiving off of the ANC. So last year, I attended the event at Emperor's Palace in Kempton Park, in the historic site where the Convention for the Democratic of South Africa, CODESA Summit, took place, and where the multi-party charter event took place. The IFP and yourself were founding members of that agreement. And I think it's important we mention it's an agreement. It wasn't a coalition. A lot of people have mistaken that. Coalitions have to be built after an election, but this was an agreement before the election amongst parties, which I think there were 6 of you at the time. Now it's 11, if I'm not mistaken. And these are parties that have agreed to work together with a common concept of unseating the ANC from governance and another group of people coming up with a coalition afterwards. Now, the reason I mention this is because the press and a lot of analysts keep running around saying that the Democratic Alliance will go into coalition with the ANC. The IFP is going to go into coalition with the ANC. But I saw that on SABC, you just once again, just yesterday or the day before, said that the IFP is not going into a coalition with the ANC. Is that an accurate statement? Is that the situation?
Yes, that is the accurate position of the IFP. The IFP is working hard to remove the ANC from power because the ANC has destroyed our country over a period of 30 years. Unemployment, crime, load shedding, and corruption, the list is endless. All those items are becoming worse every day. Yes, for the 2 months, April and May, load shedding has been suspended, but it is going to come back in the month of June. ESCOM has confirmed it. So now we're still going to suffer the consequences of load shedding. So now, the IFP is of the view, if you want to rebuild South Africa, you cannot rebuild with the very same person who destroyed South Africa that you want to rebuild. We are of the view that the multi-party charter brings fresh ideas, which the people of South Africa must give an opportunity to make the MPC an alternative government that will take our country forward, that will press a reset button, that will change the direction as our country is at the brink of being a collapsed state. We need a government that is bold to take consequence management against anyone in order to send a message that if you indulge in corruption, you will face the might of the law. And if you don't behave accordingly as an employee or a member of parliament, consequences will follow. Now, we are still of that view, and we want to appeal to the people of South Africa, especially the 14 million who are dormant. They are registered but not participating in the election. And these people say, why should we go and vote? Because our government is not helping us. And we want to appeal to them that if you don't go to vote, you have actually voted for the government that is failing you to remain in power. If you are not satisfied with the current government, take an action, be an active participant. Take your protest to the ballot box, give them a red card, vote them out, and vote in a new political party that is going to bring change in our country, and the IFP is ready for such. If the 14 million can go to the voting station, we will easily remove the current government, and the multi-party charter will be able to reach 50% plus one and effect change in our country.
Well, that would be a heck of an achievement there. That's, I think, something we'll all be interested in keeping an eye on coming next week when the results come out. So, I noticed something in your 10-point plan that I wanted to discuss with you briefly. I spoke to Bantu Hlabisa from the United Democratic Movement, and his manifesto has something similar. It's a focus on traditional leaders and the role of traditional leaders. Is this a consequence of the decline in morality and lawlessness and lack of respect for human life that we're seeing, not just in South Africa, but in much of the world, right here in America as well? For me, it's very disheartening. It's a breakdown of society in many respects, single-parent families. The list goes on and on. But you do have a focus here mentioning the poor in urban and rural areas, but also on traditional leadership. Is there a reason that that's a focus? The things I've mentioned, that's what Bantu Hlabisa seemed to believe that was important to have this focus to bring that back.
Yeah. The reason why we included the issue of the traditional leadership is that the the role of the traditional leaders is very critical in our community. Firstly, in ensuring that our heritage and culture is being promoted from one generation to the other, because that's what defines who we are. And secondly, the traditional leadership plays a critical role in ensuring stability, in resolving disputes amongst community members, not necessarily having the matter taken to the court of law. So now they are a critical element in our community, and that is why their role and the contribution should be accredited accordingly, and their roles and functions should be defined well, so that whatever they do, they operate within defined parameters.
So if I put this in a context that I'm familiar with on a personal level, of course, I lived in Botswana, and we have the Dikosi, and you have a khotla when it's time to discuss things. You come together, and then if you have a dispute, one that doesn't necessarily rise to a criminal act, but a dispute between two parties, the Kosi will hear this and will listen to it, the arguments of both sides, mull it over, and adjudicate it. Is that the kind of concept we're talking about here? Something similar?
Yeah, no, it's exactly something similar.
Okay.
Because they play a major role in resolving disputes within members of the public. And in many cases, they resolve a number of cases because they know people better. It's unlike when you go to a magistrate court, when the magistrate only sees you for the first time. But in a traditional leadership setup, you meet people you know. The headman, the traditional leader, the king is someone you know who also knows you, and you are able to resolve even difficult matters in an amicable way because of the knowledge you have of each other.
And when that system is functioning properly, it's not like the person making that judgment can just do whatever they want, because they're there with the consent of the community. In fact, and those who abuse that position can find themselves on the out, and also in a very bad position with their local community. Unlike where you have a magistrate or a higher court that doesn't know the individuals, they're there to serve the law and don't necessarily know the personalities involved and get the best results sometimes. I mean, is that a fair statement?
Yes, the traditional institution plays a better role because, as you have indicated, when you deal with people you know, even their background, even knowing their parents, sometimes when a person is trying to run away from the truth, you remind him of his parent, that you know what, your parents were honest men in the community. They will always stand for truth. Please rise to that occasion. You will find that a person will eventually tell the truth if you try to draw his background to his attention, that do not break the good history your family has had in the community. And that is how it becomes more meaningful, the involvement of the traditional institution in resolving cases in our communities.
Now, I was going through, thank you for that answer. I was going through your 10-point plan that you talk about in the manifesto. And one of the things that caught my attention is a mention that you're going to put South Africans first and reserving jobs. It was an 80-20 split. If I understand it correctly, I think what you're talking about is that, I mean, every economy, especially every advanced economy, has experts and technical experts and IT and scientists and doctors who are necessary that come in from abroad. We do. We have lots of people that work in the IT field that come from abroad that play a role. And South Africa is like that, like any other country. But if I read it correctly, what you're saying is that no more than 20% of those jobs should be occupied by foreign nationals, so that you can develop South Africa and South Africans can get a leg up. Did I understand it correctly, or is the 80-20 split something different?
No, it's exactly how you explained it. In South Africa, we have foreign nationals counting in millions. And there is no precise answer or precise figure because they are undocumented. But it is millions, more than 1 million now. And these people are not known who they are, where they reside. And you will have a problem of unaccounted criminal cases because you have citizens whom you do not know who they are and where they live. You have no fingerprints of these people to trace it on the scene of a criminal act. Secondly, in the unskilled jobs, in the restaurants, in the hospitality industry, in the construction industry, the Uber drivers, we have many of these people who are in South Africa and they are exploited as cheap labor because some of them don't even have IDs and people will pay them whatever money because they know they can't complain. Now, this is exploiting foreign nationals at the expense of the people of South Africa. Because remember, these people do not pay tax because most of them, they do not bank with the South African banks and they transport money back to their respective homes. So now the IFP says South Africa has a high rate of unemployment. We cannot afford to employ foreign nationals on unskilled jobs while South Africans remain unemployed. On skills jobs or specialization, that is why we break it into 80:20, because we do recognize there is skills that we require from people who are foreign nationals in the various fields, engineers, medical doctors, etc. We subscribe to that one. But what we are also saying, when a specialized person is employed in South Africa, he or she must be employed in a contract. And in that contract, he or she must transfer skills to a South African. And that is a general norm that is done throughout the world. And after the expiry of the contract, he must go back to his or her respective country because he has transferred skills. But for skills that we will still be needing, we will carry on employing them because we have many graduates sitting at home unemployed in South Africa, which is a crisis.
Absolutely. You know, you make a very good point about folks who can be exploited. That's one of the things I said here, doing a graduate program about 20 years ago, and people were saying that America needs illegal immigrants because Americans won't pick strawberries. And I said, so you don't realize, yeah, exactly. I don't realize the soft bigotry of your position. You're saying it's okay to exploit undocumented people here illegally because they have no recourse, so they'll take whatever they can get, and employers can underpay them and also lower wages for American citizens. And that's the outcome. I think that's kind of what you're alluding to there. Folks, you're listening to the Indaba Africa channel. This is Chris Wyatt Reports. I'm speaking with the leader, the president of the Inkatha Freedom Party, the Honorable Velenkosini Hlabisa. He has a lot of experience in politics and leads this party, founded by Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. We're talking about the 2024 national election in South Africa, just a number of days away. Now, this is a question I have for you that I'm not really sure if it's an answer for the IFP, but I know that your home province there, the area where the IFP is strongest is KwaZulu-Natal. And of course, what was once the jewel of that province was Durban, an amazing city, voted one of the best cities in the world for a long time. And I've been there many, many times. There's actually a street called Wyatt Street in Durban, so I always go by. It's a very small street where a museum is at. I go by there every time, not too far from McDonald's in the center of town. And also when I'm there to watch the comrades come in. But the decline of Durban is really disheartening and sad. I mean, people are sarcastically calling it Dirtbin now. I mean, the waterfront is atrocious. The signs are bleached, you know, where the maps are to tell you where the resorts and things, and even Ushaka is in disrepair and falling apart, and there's trash, and it's just so sad to see what's happening there. And then there's the issue of the port. And the reason I mention this, not only was Durban a jewel for South Africa, and a beautiful place for all South Africans to go on holiday and international visitors, but also it's a major port. It's the artery that feeds Southern Africa. That port at Durban is the main place where goods come in from Botswana, for Zambia, for Zimbabwe, and the state of the port is really disheartening. I don't know if your party has any ability to influence this going forward, should you win at the provincial level or have a big influence at the national level. But do you have any thoughts about what's going on in Durban? Because I'm not from South Africa, but I have to tell you, sir, I'm kind of heartbroken to see what was once an incredibly beautiful city on the state it's currently in.
Yeah, indeed, Chris. Durban is a shame today. It's filthy, dirty, stinking, and a crime scene. Service delivery from the eThekwini Metro is worse. People spend up to 2 months with no water. They have protested, they've blocked the road, they've burnt the tires. Nothing is coming forth as an indication of change or good out of their protest. Now, the IFP is of the view that if we win the government, we will have to consider, why don't you dissolve eThekwini Metro and let the people of eThekwini another opportunity to elect a new government that will be efficient and deliver services to the people of eThekwini, because eThekwini has been our destination when it comes to tourism. That interest has gone lost because there is nothing inspiring that go and spend your holidays in Durban. Rather, people think of different areas than Durban. Indeed, the ruling party has destroyed our city, but the ruling party is its record of breaking what they found good and leave worse than what they inherited.
Well, you're not going to get an argument from me on that one. That's for darn sure. It's certainly been the history. It's so sad, unfortunate to see that. Now, the African National Congress, I think they may have committed an own goal here recently. President Ramaphosa signed into law the National Health Insurance Bill, which really nationalizes healthcare and takes that out of the hands of the private sector and makes a lot of promises that it seems impossible that South Africa will be able to fulfill, given the potential cost of it. Now, the IFP in its 10-point plan addresses healthcare, but I believe that your position on national health insurance is that you're not in favor of what the ANC's come up with. If I'm wrong, please correct me, and please let us know where the IFP stands when it comes to healthcare and your thoughts on NHI.
The IFP believes that everybody must access quality health care. But the NHI Act that has been signed by the president of our country is not what we think is the right way to go. Firstly, the mere fact that this law is signed into act just few days before elections speaks volumes. And the IFP warned that the NHI, as has been signed by the president, does not have the funding. It's just to mislead people, giving them hope of something you know you are not going to be able to deliver. And the stakeholders, the medical doctors, other professionals who are involved in the healthcare sector, the medical aid schemes, they were not taken on board. Because if you want to implement something that is going to work, you must take along the stakeholders involved in that particular area. This is not for the first time. There was OBE, outcome-based education, which was forced by the very same ruling party to be introduced in our schools. The IFP stood against the OBE and the OPE became a failure. After years, they had to drop it because from the word go, it had flaws, which the IFP pointed out. Similar, the NHI Act is another disaster, not now in the education sector, but it's going to be a disaster in the health sector. Instead of improving our health sector, it is going to destroy it, as many doctors will leave our country and many practices will close down because people will render service to patients and there will be no one who is paying for those services because our government is known, is very bad when it comes to pay for the services rendered, and the government has to pay for those services. It's a known fact. We know people who are providing security in hospitals, they have stayed for more than 6 months not being paid. People providing the nutrition schemes in our schools stays for months not being paid. I do not see a medical doctor who will run a surgery where he is seeing patients. When it is time for the government to pay, they say we have a 90-day period to pay. That how is that going to person operate his business? So now the NHI Act is going to be a failure. The unfortunate thing, this is gambling with people's lives.
I agree, and it's you know, the ANC. I believe they thought this was going to be enough to keep them above 50+1, but in fact, the daily tracking polls, if they could be believed, the ANC is now tumbling rapidly because their endless effort to racialize South Africa and blame everything on apartheid instead of accepting responsibility for their own failures and macroeconomic policies. They wrongly assume that the only people that have any money in South Africa are white South Africans, when in fact there's a significant black middle class that also participate in private health insurance, and they're not happy about this. And the problem for the ANC is that those are people who are likely to go vote for someone. And I think that's probably having a negative effect. That's why I said it looks like an own goal. And it may have been disastrous, and it could help the multi-party charter and any potential coalition opposition after this, because honestly, it looks like an own goal at this stage.
Definitely, they missed the timing in terms of what they did. And the people of South Africa are very smart to see that this is trying to deceive them as if they are coming with something good. But this idea of NHI as it stands is not going to work at all to make our healthcare system better.
Well, one of the things in your 10-point plan is something that's very much definitely focused on the KZN province, and that is your support for the Ingonyama Trust, the tribal trust that's there, that's controlled by the Zulu King. I think it's 2.8 million hectares, if I'm not mistaken. That's a topic that comes up occasionally, particularly when people start talking about expropriation, and expropriation without compensation. But that trust has been there for over 30 years, and the Zulu King controls it. I'm not aware of it being a major problem. I could be wrong about that. But that's not something necessarily that's of interest to the rest of the country, unless you look at the standpoint that you're protecting property rights. Maybe that's where it plays out. But certainly it's something that you've included in your 10-point plan of interest to people in KwaZulu-Natal.
The Ingonyama Trust Act gave land to the exclusive use by Africans who resides in the traditional communities. They are not renting even a cent. They did not even pay a cent. They can build on this land, they can farm, they can do grazing of their cattle, they can do anything on this land, having not paid a cent, nor renting a cent. This is the ownership of land which is due to millions of South Africans who are landless. Now, the IFP says, let us use Ingonyama Trust Act as a model of getting land that you will give to black people. Ingonyama Trust should be used as a benchmark, even in other provinces, as to how best can you get land that will be administered by a traditional institution, but allow all benefits to the members of the community to use the land for the good of their families and the nation. Of course, the IFP believes in the expropriation with compensation, because we want to give assurance to investors that if you invest in South Africa, you are not running a risk of losing your investment. Because if you do not give that assurance, investors want assurance if they want to invest in a particular country in terms of the security of what they have invested in the country. If then you are not clear on the question of expropriation with or without compensation, you put them at an unease position. The IFP, therefore, is very categoric that there is more land that we must get from the state, give it to landless people, from the private owners, but you must compensate them.
Well, in fact, that's always a very contentious issue the world over. Here, it comes out, it's instantiated as the concept of eminent domain. When the state can take land, they have to compensate for it, though, justly at fair market value, but they can take land in the public interest. So, for instance, for the construction of railroads, when the country expanded, for ports and airports and things like that. But it's very controversial, and here in America, from time to time, it has been abused. We've seen in Connecticut, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where people had homes that were 200 years old in vibrant communities, and developers there wanted to build beachfront malls and a resort there, and the state used eminent domain to confiscate those people's homes and kick them out of them and level them and build something for a business. Obviously, hopefully that's something that there'd be safety measures to prevent that sort of thing. But expropriation with compensation is the law of the land in South Africa. It's in the Constitution, and it's a process that has been used, not frequently, but it has been used. So thank you for explaining that. I do appreciate it. You know, the ANC appears to be desperate to pull any trick out of their bag. They're just looking to see where they can, do what they can to arrest the decline. And this week they've announced that if only you return us to power, if only you let the ANC stay in power, in 2 years, we promise to deliver a basic income grant. I don't know about you, sir, but that has about zero credibility with me. In 2 years, that will be forgotten about. There'll be no basic income grant because there's no money for it, and it's just electioneering. And I find it to be crass, and quite frankly, I think if I was a South African voter, I'd be insulted by it.
The IFP wants to assure the people of South Africa that, because there is a misinformation that is being done now, that when the ruling party is taken out of power, the grants will be taken away. That is not true. The grants do not belong to the political party that is leading our country now, because in essence, the payment of the pension to senior citizens amongst the African people was started by the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi in the erstwhile KwaZulu government. So now we believe that the senior citizens must be looked after in terms of pension, and the various grants that should intervene in the lives of people living with disabilities, people who are unemployed, should be made available to our people. But we must not be a grant-reliant state. We must intervene where necessary, but more focus must be given in ensuring that our economy grows, so that we create job opportunities and people earn a better salary than a grant. In actual fact, the 350 grant is not sufficient for a person to live even for a week, not to mention a month. We think the grants that will be intervening in the personal circumstances of our people, children, unemployed, and we even suggest that a pregnant woman must receive a grant, because if you are unemployed and you are pregnant and you do not have proper meals, it has an effect on your child. But if you get proper meals that is healthy, it assists the pregnant woman to deliver a child more healthy and more wiser, because during the pregnancy period, there was enough resources as a grant to make the mother to be able to access healthy food timelessly.
Well, you touched on a number of very important points here too. Let me just reiterate very quickly that you talk about the grants. 350 rand, honestly, is really a sad joke. I mean, that's $23 US. That's not even half a tank of petrol in my car. That's no one can live off that. And I remember President Ramaphosa boasting during the lockdown that this grant, people started businesses. Really? When people were able to save money off that? That's a joke. That's insulting. You know, but
it's a joke.
Yeah, this party insults people all the time. I don't know if you saw the Mbizo in the Northern Cape. When they introduced the president, the ANC representative said to these people, now they gave food parcels out. Of course, the ANC claimed it had nothing to do with the election. It's just because it was in Mbizo. But these were huge food parcels. I saw the images of them. And they gave them out to 15,000 people. I don't know where they got the money for that, since they couldn't pay their bills a couple months ago. But that's another story. Anyway, so they gave the food out at this Mbizo. And then they had the audacity to tell these people in the Northern Cape, most of whom are desperately poor, who have nothing in the way of services. They said, you do realize the president's last paycheck is May 15th. And it's up to you to get the president reelected and the ANC to stay in power so that he gets a paycheck on June 15th. And I just found that nauseating. I mean, this man is worth hundreds of millions of US dollars based on the equity that he was handed. And you are telling people that they have to go vote for him when they don't even have jobs and they don't have any hope. And you're giving them food parcels so that a man that wealthy can continue to get a paycheck. I don't know about you, but I just find that incredibly insulting. But you talked about, I suspect you probably do too, but I don't want to speak for you. But you mentioned that's not enough. And, you know, another thing you alluded to here, and I think it carries over, a very important point for the audience is once kids are born, and this is a major issue throughout Africa, there's something known as stunting. And it comes as a consequence of not getting sufficient protein from the age of birth until the age of 5. And that means that children's brains don't develop as rapidly and as effectively as they're supposed to. So kids have to have sufficient protein intake at that time. And there are a lot of programs that exist around the world to help make sure that, you know, small children get that nutrition. But you can never recover that. If you have stunting in a child, they'll never develop the mental capacity, intellectual capacity they could have had. But I don't know. I don't know if you want to respond to my comment about, you know, what they said about the president. You don't have to, but if you want, I'll give you a chance to jump in on there. That's to me, that just shows just how disconnected the people that run the ANC are with the people that are voting for them. It's like a chasm. The people are here, and the ANC elites are over here with their blue light escorts and their self-aggrandizement, their self-enrichment. I mean, that's my take on it, sir.
No, I fully agree with you, Chris. That it is as you have just said.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. So let me get to a couple things here before we wrap up. We're running out of time here because you've got campaigning to do. You've been very generous with your time. But the first point in your program is one that got my attention. I'm sure it'll get a lot of folks' attention. And you're talking about rebuilding the economy and ending load shedding. Now, what's the plan on ending load shedding? Do you have a plan in place? Because the ANC's plan a few years ago was simply to break the ESCOM into 3 separate entities, one for transmission, one for generation, one for local delivery. And in my view, that was pretty, I don't know if, I don't want to, because I don't know what your plan is, but to me, that just seemed like another opportunity for them to pack corporate boards with patronage hires and spread their patrons around rather than an effective system. But what's the IFP's plan for overcoming load shedding? Because the ANC is sure trying to convince people that it's stopped, but we all know better. You said as much at the beginning.
Yeah, the first thing the IFP will do is maintenance of the infrastructure. If you don't maintain your infrastructure, no matter how good it is, it will fail along the way. Secondly, we will commission new power stations, finish them, and let the power station provide services to our people. Our current government is building power stations for more than 10 years. They set budget gets finished, projects not finished, years after years. The IFP will ensure that when we initiate a project, it gets done and render services. We will ensure also that the red tape in the procurement process is overridden to ensure that it doesn't take too long to get the equipment that you want from another country in order to fix a damage in a power station. These will be measures because if you are operating under an abnormal situation of a load shedding, you need to cut off certain red tapes that are not assisting in resolving the problem quickly. There are many engineers who left ESCOM before the age of retirement simply because they said, this government does not want to listen. When we tell them that you do A, B, C, D, we better leave. We do not want this thing to collapse while we are there. We will enroll back those engineers because they have sound experience to come and contribute, and we will give our full ear to listen to them because it is their specialization field. You must listen to them so that they guide you accordingly, other than wanting to dominate because you are a government.
Well, I think as we get ready to wrap up here, it's going to be very interesting. May 29th is the election day. I will be in South Africa, but I'll be in the Western Cape, not in KZN during the election day. And I wish you and all the folks who work so hard for your party great success. But, it is early, and it will be, I think, until June 13th. You have 14 days to form a government in Parliament after the election. And early days, but the way things are going, we don't know. But there's, well, let me ask you this question. I haven't looked at the IFP list. Is it fair to assume that you're on that list or near the top of that list, and that we'll see you in Parliament after this election?
Yes, I'm in the Parliament in Cape Town. I'm number one in the national list of the IFP. We complied with all requirements in all 9 provinces at a legislature as well as at a national level. We are looking forward to the elections on 29 May, and we appealing to the people of South Africa. They have protested enough, blocking roads, burning tires. 29 May, take the protest to the ballot box. Remove the government that has failed you, and vote in a new government, and give that new government 5 years. Hold it accountable. Don't vote it in and leave it, because they will sleep on duty too. Once you have voted them in, hold them accountable for 5 years. If they don't deliver, vote them out in 2029. The IFP is ready to serve the people of South Africa at provincial levels in all 9 provinces, as well as at the national level in Cape Town.
Well, that was an excellent closing statement. That wasn't what I was ready for that yet, but well said. What I was getting at is that if you're in Parliament, which you will be in Parliament, you'll certainly get at least that number of seats. You're in Parliament. The president of South Africa is not selected by the voters, but by the members of Parliament from amongst those seated in Parliament. Should the ANC fall sufficiently and be unable to form a majority or a plurality coalition, I would imagine that the IFP is in a good position, and a few people have mentioned your name, bandied about as a candidate that you might be nominated to be the next president of South Africa. So I think that would be interesting. So, folks, you might be looking at the future president of South Africa. I'm not predicting that, and wouldn't ask you to go out on a limb, but it's a possibility. And if that's the case, then I'll have the opportunity to say that I've known the president of 3 countries in person. Of course, George Bush, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf in Liberia, and then if you get elected, that would be the 3rd one. So that would be interesting for me personally. But you just gave kind of a good closing statement, but let me give you one last chance to wrap it up here to make the argument why people should come vote for the IFP. I think you've done a pretty good job there, but is there anything else you want to say that come to the polls, vote for IFP on May 29th?
The people of South Africa are being urged to take a stand on May 29. This is a decisive moment. Our country is going down the drain. The economy has collapsed and all systems are collapsing. The only opportunity we have is 29 May to elect a new government. The IFP is different from other political parties. We do not make empty promises. The promise we make is our commitment. The 13 points we made in our manifesto is something that we are willing to be held accountable for the next 5 years. The IFP, you can trust it because we believe in accountability, in consequence management, and in giving feedback to the community whenever we have challenges. The policies we follow are tested and are successful worldwide. We do not follow policies that have failed elsewhere and want to try in South Africa through the lives of our people. That is why we are saying, if you vote the IFP, you vote for change. You vote for integrity, you vote for service delivery, you vote for accountability, and you vote for a new direction of South Africa.
Well, thank you, sir. Very kind of you. And again, a very busy campaign season, just days before the election. Very generous, as always. We really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And we wish you the best of luck campaigning. And I suppose if I can offer any advice, it's get back out there and get those votes.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, we'll let you drop off. Folks, the president of the Inkatha Freedom Party, Mr. Hlabisa, and I'll help him get into the waiting room there. And then we'll wrap up the program here in just a few moments. But my thanks to my guest. All right, folks, there you go. That is the president of the Inkatha Freedom Party, Hlabisa. And we thank him for his time. Once again, he's always been a gracious guest and always responded to requests for interviews, whether it was the multi-party charter conference that took place last year in person, or it's been via Zoom like this. I've done a couple of times. And I have to say that the Inkatha Freedom Party has been very polite, respectful, and professional. The one opportunity I missed out on back in 2022 when Mangosuthu Buthelezi was still with us is they dedicated a center in his name, and he was at the event, and I was invited as a VIP to the event. And unfortunately, my schedule was already made on my trip to South Africa, and I missed being there by a day. Talk about disappointing, but it's the way things go. Anyway, thank you all for tuning in. More to follow. Don't forget, later today, it's the Challenge Cup final, and Gloucester is taking on the Sharks up at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London. And I'll be covering that live on Rugby Ascendant, so thank you for that. The clock is ticking, folks. It is Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Just 6 days from South Africa's potentially momentous elections. If you're South African, please go vote. Make sure you vote. And vote your conscience. Hopefully your conscience leads you away from the party that's destroyed South Africa and blamed on everyone except themselves. And it's 4 a.m. here on the East Coast. I think I'll take a brief nap and then get back up and to work. Thank you all so much. God bless and have a lovely day. And we'll catch you here next time on Chris Wyatt Reports. Chris Wyatt Africa Have a lovely day. Thank you so much. Cheers, everybody. And thank you again to my guest.